Let's start with this. My Lakers pursuing Bojan Bogdanovic. Maybe a little bit ironic. I mean, he dropped 38 on them last night. He was absolutely fantastic. Of course, we know
Yeah, I'd
it's
like to get him too after that.
right. Of course, I don't think it was just he scored 38. Suddenly, Rob picks up the phone. Rob Pelinka picks up the phone and says, "Hey, we need this guy." But as of right now, according to Shams Charania, the Lakers offering a protected first-round pick plus salaries. Mark Stein adding in that the Pistons so far have said no to a protected. They want unprotected first-round pick for a 33-year-old Bojan Bogdanovic, shooting 44% from three on the season, 21 points per game. Has 3 years, including this season, under contract, though the final year is only $2 million guaranteed. Can you tell I've already broken this stuff down for Lakers Nation today? Next year, looking at about $20 million in salary. So, Keith, when we look at the outgoing pieces for the Lakers, I instantly jump to, well, it must be Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn. You said, well, let's take a look at the math. What are you thinking here on a potential deal to get Bogdanovic to LA?
Yeah, you want to get Bogdanovic, you've got to get to about 15.6 million in matching salary. Lakers are a tax team. They'll be a tax team after a Bogdanovic trade, barring something crazy unexpected happening here, but before it. So that means that they can do basically 125% of their outgoing salary. So that's about 15.6 million to be able to match on Bogdanovic's 19.55 million. So you're absolutely right. The number one piece in that, Patrick Beverley. That's the easiest way to get there. That's 13 million. I think also when we get beyond the math and the cap sheets, that makes sense on the floor because that's in effect kind of who Bogdanovic would replace in the opening group, I would guess. I'm fairly certain they're pretty comfortable with Schroeder now, locked in at the starting point guard spot. You slide Walker to the 3, which he naturally is a 3, or to the 2 rather, right? Yeah. Instead of at the 3, and then plug Bogdanovic in at the 3. Him and LeBron become essentially interchangeable, 3-4 forwards, and off we go. So I think we're in a position there where that is makes sense basketball wise. It also makes sense salary wise. Now, Kendrick Nunn, yeah, maybe. You've got some options you can go to though, because you can do you could do Damian Jones and then one of the minimum guys. You could do lots of different looks on this. Obviously, Westbrook, if you wanted to make the whole deal much bigger and expand it and all that sort of stuff, that could happen. But I don't think we're going to see anything like that. So Nunn and Beverly probably is what makes the most sense. The Pistons are miles below the tax. So that's not a major concern for them. The Lakers could even throw cash in to cover part of the money they're sending. But yeah, this one makes a little bit more sense than some of the things we hear where it essentially has to be Russell Westbrook who's part of the trade.
Right. Certainly easier to get something done, particularly as we've discussed around the NBA. I don't know if Russell Westbrook's value has changed as far as teams wanting assets added to Russ to get them to take him on his $47 million expiring contract. Whereas to the Lakers, he's actually been a fairly beneficial player coming off the bench for them. Certainly not worth $47 million, but he's at least not been a negative on the floor for them. So I think there's less incentive to move him, particularly if they have to pay to move him. So
definitely do not give up assets to move Westbrook at this point. There's no need for that.
Exactly. And so with that, I think it makes it less likely we see a Russell Westbrook trade. More likely it's something like what we're talking about here. Now, my question though, because I got a little nauseous when I saw unprotected first round pick is what the Pistons want. I mean, the Pistons just traded, it doesn't matter as much, but the Pistons just traded Kelly Olynyk straight up for this guy. Essentially, Saban Lee was in the deal as well. And suddenly it's an unprotected first round pick. I would be extremely cautious if I was the Lakers about throwing in an unprotected first round pick for a 33-year-old Bogdanovic. I just think that's danger zone when you start talking about a future pick like that with no protections on a player that almost certainly will not be on your team when that pick comes due.
Yeah, I think we're working with a little bit of different math than when he was traded before because of just having signed that extension. with the Pistons. Now you get those at least an extra year. You could get
Mhm.
2. That's fully
Good
under
point.
team control there. So that does change things a little bit as opposed to where he was an expiring deal headed to Detroit. So that's probably a benefit. A lot of times we think of these things as well. We'd rather have the expiring, but not if you're the Lakers, unless again, you'd be sacrificing a chunk of your cap space
That's
next
true.
year. So that has to factor in here too. I last round of cap space projections I did for Spot Track. I just did them. We're going to be doing these monthly leading up. I have them at now 33.4 million in the off season. So that's you're taking on 20 million. You're not going to be a cap space team then. Because what happens, just to nerd out a minute here, the minute you drop below the combined amount of your other exceptions, you're not going to be a cap space team because those get added back against your cap space. So that would be the mid-level and the biannual. So that would put them back over the cap. So in this case, you're really looking at it as, all right, Bogdanovic plus a first, plus the players we'd have to give up, plus our cap space. Is that worth it? Is that where we want to go, for the Lakers? Because now you've kind of sacrificed some, if not all, of your flexibility. Because the other challenge with Russell Westbrook that comes in is I've seen a lot of people say, well, we don't need to have cap space because we can just sign and trade Westbrook in the summer. Well, that's not going to be something teams are jumping at doing.
No.
Teams are not going to be super excited about, let's sign and trade Westbrook, for the stuff, especially if you don't have stuff to attach to it. And that's where that becomes a little bit of a risky proposition as well. So I do think Bogdanovic is great. I think he fits a lot of what the Lakers need. I just don't know that is the long-term, this is it. This guy pushes us into title contention, makes us definitely a playoff team. But if you can get him for Beverly Nunn and a protected first round pick, just in case things go sideways, I'd probably be all over that. Because this is a guy 21 points per game, and he's basically right knocking on the door of a 50, 40, 90 season. And I don't think his shots are going to get any worse playing with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So I think I think he'd be a really, really good fit in LA.